At the same time, you got the IMF comes out and says just last week that the world economic order is undergoing currently a major reset. All of these things together, Andrew, you put them together and it tells me that there is something much bigger in store for gold than the world is prepared to understand or accept. And, you know, I think that picking a number is very challenging. Of course, you have Goldman Sachs saying as high as $4,500. You have other mainstream pundits saying 3,700 to 4,000 in that range, talking about gold reaching a level, you know, in the thousands of dollars higher than where we are right now is not that outlandish. You know, first of all, if we were to look at the United States becoming a net importer of gold, I don't ever remember it being a net importer of gold. There were 1 or 2 years where we did have net imports, but not like we are seeing now, where, you know, more gold has been imported to the United States since January than at any time since the end of World War II, when we took over for the pound sterling at the Bretton Woods Agreement. Everyone sent us their gold. Something big is happening with gold. And of course, you see Trump's a tweet the other day on Easter Sunday. He says, the golden rule of negotiating success, he who has the gold makes the rules. Thank you. You see talk of revaluing gold, which was held in the gold revaluation account. That's actually the name of it, which you can't make up, whether it be the head of the Bundesbank or the Dutch National Bank or members of the governing board of the Bundesbank or Senator Loomis from Wyoming, all talking of gold revaluation. Whether we talk of Judy Shelton, Trump's former nominee to run the Fed in 2016, who advocates for 50-year treasuries backed by gold, or the Treasury Secretary currently of the United States, who largest holding was gold while running a hedge fund and is prior to becoming the Treasury Secretary, and is a self-proclaimed gold bug. There's so many things happening that make you wonder and think. Now, to Jan's point, it would certainly benefit the United States and all the central banks to see gold revalued to a much higher level, whether it be by the market slowly, as we've seen slow and steady, tremendous appreciation that's gone unnoticed by the mainstream, which is really shocking to me, which tells me we're still very early in the game, or something more dramatic where, you know, they come in and revalue gold. Every $4,000 increase in the price of gold gives the Treasury General account $1 trillion free and clear. So, you know, you see gold at levels of, you know, 4,000, 8,000, 12,000, whatever that number is, at $12,000 an ounce. And I think that's the number that James Rickards came up with. You're giving $3 trillion free and clear to the Treasury General account. I did a little bit of math myself after watching a great video by Mike Maloney. So Mike Maloney's video talked about when gold was backing the currency prior to 33 over my shoulder there. It was just backing M1, which is the notes in circulation. M2 is a broader measure of the money supply. They got rid of M3. They said it was archaic. So currently the broadest measure that we have access to is M2. And that's largely credit. It's 92% credit. So when you look at your bank account and you see $50,000 in there, that's credit. That's M2. The bank owes you the notes, you know, they promise to pay it to you, but M1 is the currency in circulation. M2 is only 8% currency, 92% credit. So when gold was backing the dollar prior to 33, it was backing M1. And if you take M1 right now, 2,365 billion, and divide it by the 261 million ounces we supposedly have, you get $9,044 an ounce. Could that happen? Yeah, why not? I mean, why not? Why not revalue gold to a level high enough to start to whittle down the debt and benefit the central banks on the planet, who for the last, really since 2017, have been on a binge buying and repatriating, and largely because of many of the things that you've talked about for years that enlightened me, namely the reclassification of gold, the tier 1 status, and the importance of owning an asset that has no counterparty risk. The way that the mechanism works, in essence, is if you had gold at $8,000 an ounce, the Treasury would issue gold certificates to the Federal Reserve. the Federal Reserve would, in essence, just create that money and give it to the Treasury General account. They now would have, at 8,000, they would have $2 trillion free and clear to do with as they see fit. Those certificates do not give the Federal Reserve access or a call on the nation's gold. It's the fiat equivalent of it. So it's kind of an accounting gimmick, to say the least. So I guess I would just simply say this. Something is very different with gold. There is no question about it. When you see the massive amounts of gold imports into the country, when you see the massive amounts of imports to the BRICS nations, the continual drive to repatriate and accumulate gold on all levels, using all different techniques, even flying around the world, as China is doing, buying doré and concentrate to disintermediate the marketplace. You got the largest producer of gold in the world and the second largest producer of silver flying around the world buying doré and concentrate, so no one knows what they're doing. There's a push, I believe, to reintegrate gold, Andrew, into the monetary system, and that's why it's slowly bubbling higher. The volatility keeps people at bay. The volatility keeps the mainstreams, or the normies, as Cliff High calls them, out of the market, but yet it's slowly revaluing and being reintegrated, I believe, into the system rather than reacting to something where it just shoots up. You know, it's the old frog in the pot of lukewarm water that the heat's slowly being turned up. So the question to me really is, how high does it go on its own? And will they, in essence, choose to revalue it the way that Roosevelt did in 33 and the way that Nixon did in 71 or 72 and 73? After he closed the gold window in 71, he did revalue gold the next year by about 7 or 8% by devaluing the dollar and pushing gold from 35 to 38. And then in 73 from 38 to 42.22. Gold revaluation is not a new phenomenon. And who would it benefit? Well, it would benefit all the central banks. So I think numbers higher than most people would consider to be prudent to say publicly is realistic. We've seen tremendous inflows into COMEX, which lends me to believe that they understand exactly what you're saying. If you took the entire eligible category and applied it to the open interest or to it's almost 1-to-1. It's close. It's about 90%. Now all of that eligible is not for sale at these prices, but it's getting closer. It's as if they're preparing for exactly what you're talking about. And to me, I see greater instability, or the Achilles heel to me, and maybe you're probably the person who's more inclined to answer that, but to me, I see greater threats in the London market, where the leverage is far greater, where I don't know if they've fixed their problem with the lack of trucks, the Bank of England, but that T+1 that you speak of, has been pushed all the way out to T+8 weeks. Now, I don't know if that's getting any better, but to me, it just seems as though that this current administration is wise to exactly what you're talking about and says this is a problem. We need to fix it. When you see the inflows into COMEX, it is no coincidence. They're the largest ever. And almost getting that 1-to-1 relationship with obligations. So I guess if I had to say to me where the real risk is, it's in the OTA market in London, where there would be a failure to deliver. It just seems as though that what's happening on COMEX, someone has tipped them to saying, you better get your house in order quickly. And at the current rates that they're bringing gold in, by July 1st, they ought to be fully compliant. At least that's the way it looks to me. I'd be interested to know your thoughts. At the same time, you got the IMF comes out and says just last week that the world economic order is undergoing currently a major reset. I mean, all of these things together, Andrew, you put them together and it tells me that there is something much bigger in store for gold than the world is prepared to understand or accept. And that's why you see the biggest, smartest money in the world. It's not just that they're the wealthiest, these central banks and sovereign wealth funds, but they're the most well-informed. And to me, that's currency that you can't put a price tag on. Information ahead of the crowd is worth so much. But yet they seem to be dropping crumbs. When Trump says he who has the gold makes the rules. I mean, really? when have you ever heard a president say anything like that? So I don't know. I think this is going to be a very interesting few years, maybe more so in a different way than the last four. 5 weeks ago, I have a friend who belongs to Trump International Golf Course in West Palm Beach. He brought me golfing there, and Trump was there playing with Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida. And it took us about